A lot is on the line tonight as Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump take to the debate stage. We're taking a live look in Philadelphia right now at the National Constitution Center.
In the marquee debate matchup ahead of the November election, it's Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris, and it could be the only time the vice president and former president face off with no more debates currently scheduled.
Now, Trump was on the campaign trail in Wisconsin ahead of the debate tonight, with Harris taking a break from prep in Pittsburgh.
Harris will likely have to defend flip-flops from past stances. There were 9 areas where she's reportedly changed, including originally opposing a border wall, no longer opposing a fracking ban, and backing off Medicare for all.
National polling averages have the race at a dead heat between the two candidates. A New York Times Siena poll released on the eve of the debate has Trump up over 1 point over Harris, well within the margin of error, of course, and the closest it has ever been between candidates with just 8 weeks to go before an election.
The debate could be the last chance to shift the electorate. Big chance here.
You're going to see the same Donald Trump that you saw a couple of months ago in Georgia with Joe Biden. He's going to be calm, cool, and collected. He's going to set up the contrast between the disastrous administration of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden.
Kamala Harris is going to demonstrate why she's going to be the next president. I think she's going to have an excellent command of the issues. She's going to be able to draw contrasts with Donald Trump.
When the dust settles, it will have been the 7th time Donald Trump has appeared on the big stage in a general election debate, the most ever.
Wow.
Now, Dane, I know you and I have talked about this in the past, and it really blows my mind to think about this, honestly. This is the first time that Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are meeting each other face to face. You know, we see these faces on our television screens on the daily at this point, but they've never actually met in person. So not only is this the first time they're debating each other, this is the first time that they're going to be shaking each other's hands and meeting each other in person.
You know, in the wake of the pandemic, this is really interesting to see the debates not have an audience, rather just reporters in the crowd. That really changes the dynamic of things. These candidates have to speak to the American people, not necessarily to just the crowd that is in there. So, you know, depending on, you know, their points, they're really going to have to speak in, you know, today's social media age in sound bites, if you will, that can, some one-liner quips that can really gain traction on social media and speak to people getting attention.
Exactly, and I know a lot of the American people are super excited. They've been anticipating this debate. We know when President Biden initially dropped out of the race, we weren't sure if Vice President Kamala Harris was going to debate. There were talks if she was going to debate former President Donald Trump or not. So obviously she's getting up there, she's hitting that stage, and I know the American people are going to have all eyes on the two of them tonight.
You know, with, you know, Joe Biden dropping out after the first debate earlier this year with, former President Donald Trump, it was an interesting dynamic because that was the earliest a presidential debate had been held in the election cycle. So, you know, had Joe Biden announced earlier on that he would not be running, then, you know, we would have seen a potential, you know, multiple debates between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump. Now, potentially just one that the American people will have if any of those voters are on the fence to make up their mind.
Like we said, this is definitely going to be a telltale debate and maybe a decision maker for a lot of American voters. Now, Dane, I know you and I both go to bed super early for work, but I think I'm going to be staying up a little past my bedtime tonight to catch. Yeah, exactly.
Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump will square off in their first and potentially only presidential debate tonight in Philadelphia. Washington correspondent Julia Benbrook this morning here on how the two candidates have been preparing for what could be a make or break moment.
Vice President Kamala Harris has spent the days leading up to the debate hunkered down with her team in Pittsburgh, making brief public appearances.
Are you ready to face Donald Trump? Yes, I am. Yes.
Aides say Harris has held mock debates and is leaning on advice from former President Donald Trump's previous Democratic opponents, President Joe Biden and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, hoping to benefit from their experiences.
He plays from this really old and tired playbook, right, where there's no floor for him in terms of how low he will go, and we should be prepared for that.
The vice president has been reading briefing papers about Trump's positions and past comments, including the insults he's directed at her. Despite the recent change at the top of the Democratic ticket, sources say Trump's debate prep strategy hasn't changed much since he faced Biden in June.
We're run by stupid people. Stupid people. And we found that out at the debate with Joe. How did that work out? And we're going to find it out again on Tuesday night. Is anybody going to be watching?
The former president argues he doesn't need formal preparation, such as mock debates, but has been meeting with senior advisors, policy experts, and outside allies to ready himself for Tuesday.
We talk about it, but there's not a lot you can do. You either know your subject or not, you either have good policy or not.
Reporting in Philadelphia, I'm Julia Benbrook.
Well, election season is kicking into high gear with races at every level from school boards to the White House. Candidates are going head to head, putting their policies and personalities on full display for voters. Today, we'll see the high-stakes presidential debate between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump, as polls show there is still no clear leader in this race. Reporter Michael Yoshida with more on what to be looking forward to and how debates can shape an election.
Debates and their memorable moments historically are critical to candidates' successes and failures.
The 1980s are now calling to ask for their foreign policy back.
President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump's matchup changed the 2024 race entirely.
If we finally beat Medicare.
Now, Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump are facing off for the first time.
For the typical viewer who's watching this with some degree of how am I going to vote and I'm trying to inform myself, whereas Kamala Harris coming from on policy and personality, whereas Donald Trump coming from on policy and credibility.
Frank Sesno of George Washington University says even though theatrics often replace substance, when watching any political debate, voters should
listen closely to what these candidates say about the particulars of policy, how they would pay for them, what the implications are, how far they would reach, how they would implement them.
And note how the candidates respond to each other.
The interaction between the two of them will be very important. One, for how they define themselves and they try to define the other. Two, how they deal with a difficult situation.
The debate should last around 90 minutes, which may seem like a big commitment, but Sesno says it's an investment every voter should make.
Who of these two candidates is saying something that will address the issues and the problems that I and my family are confronting, and who seems most credible and most relatable on that level?
In Washington, I'm Michael Yoshida reporting.